You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
Hello everyone and welcome to Force 13's live streaming service. We're going to be live for the next hour talking about the headline maker of the tropics right now, Cyclone Emnati, which is currently on its way to Madagascar and is expected to make landfall, according to MeteoFrance, as a powerful Category 4 storm with winds of 130 miles per hour, Force 13 having this at a Stage 7 on the cyclone destruction potential scale. With me on my team today is Havoc, John, and Dragon Rider. All of you here today talking about the cyclone. How's everyone doing?
I'm doing good.
Certainly good to hear. We can see this satellite presentation of the storm, and I feel like the big thing that we're seeing is that the satellite is improving with time to some degree, but there are also some signs of an Eyewall replacement cycle beginning to take place. Havoc, I know you've been talking about this a little bit. What is the major thing that happens with these Eyewall replacement cycles? Why is that important for the viewers to know?
Mainly because Eyewall replacement cycles will end up making the storm expand in size, making the threat in a wider swath, like we saw with Batsirai, except it wasn't as big as we wanted. We didn't want it to.
Yeah, Batsirai had an Eyewall replacement cycle that made it much larger, which wasn't, excuse me, which wasn't particularly good, because that meant that the storm had higher storm surge, it was larger, but luckily the wind speeds were not quite able to recover as a result. I know at one point it was a robust Category 4 storm. Luckily it did not manage to be at that intensity when it made landfall. This storm, currently at 125 miles per hour, with a pressure of 948 millibars. You can see right here our situation report. This made here by our very own Walter. This was made as of a couple hours ago. We can see there the latest MeteoFrance information. 125 mile per hour winds 1 minute, 110 miles per hour, 175 kilometers per hour 10 minute, with the pressure of 948 millibars, and this storm is moving west-southwest at 7 miles per hour. Currently at 17.6 degrees south, 55.3 degrees east as of the latest MeteoFrance bulletin update. That's what we're looking at right now, and I think 125 miles per hour is in the ballpark. To the team, what do we think about the current intensity of this storm? Do we think 125 miles per hour is a fair intensity estimate?
Yeah, it seems about right.
Yes. That looks pretty good for the 125. Yeah, I think, I will go with it.
Yeah, I think that the 125 does a pretty good job. You can also see on the bottom of your screen here our projected chances of landfall based on the official forecast. 85% chance of a Category 3 landfall, 60% chance of a Category 4 landfall, only a 4% chance of a Category 5 landfall. We're not expecting this to be a Category 5 when it does hit land. I know that's a question that some people are going to be asking as time does go on, but we're not anticipating at this time a Category 5 landfall. Category 4 currently anticipated by MeteoFrance at this time as the storm does move on. We can see some signs of this Eyewall replacement cycle beginning here as we have a bit of a moat, as we'd call it, starting to form, basically being where this divot in the eye itself starts to get larger, and then eventually that'll wrap around the whole thing and you'll have a larger eye. Sometimes the eye collapses during these. Sometimes the eye just expands in size. It depends on how quickly that inner eye wall can erode away. But the big consequences of this are that the storm is going to be larger, it's going to have more moisture content, heavier rainfall, and the biggest thing with it is that it's going to have higher storm surge. The thing that we don't know is how long this is going to take, and that's crucial, because if this doesn't take very long, then the storm could have all of the winds that it already had with it now, plus all of the added things with an Eyewall replacement cycle of a larger storm with worse impacts across the board. In the event it takes longer, these Eyewall replacement cycles tend to weaken the maximum wind speed. So during the Eyewall replacement cycle, If it lasts a while, it could really prevent this storm from hitting its ceiling in terms of winds before striking Madagascar. Either way, the Eyewall replacement cycle is bad news because it means that the impacts of this storm will be more widespread. The hope is that the only silver lining from this could be that those wind speeds do go down a bit and remain lower throughout the rest of the storm's life before it does strike land. We'll see if that does end up happening, but that's the current hope and dream at this time. So we continue to take a look at things. We're now going to take a look at the latest alerts here. So an orange alert currently in place for La Reunion, an orange cyclone alert currently in effect. That basically meaning that you need to be on guard here. It's not a red alert or a purple alert by any means. But the main meaning of the alert is that there are strong winds in progress at this time. That's the big thing. So make sure that you are keeping yourself informed as this storm does move on through. You're not going to be getting any sort of really strong winds or anything with this, but you're going to be getting, excuse me, higher surf, heavier rainfall. Those are the major things. Going over the cone now from MeteoFrance, we can see rather clearly the storm this is an intense tropical cyclone right now. And it's expected to strike land as an intense tropical cyclone. MeteoFrance currently having this make landfall again as a Category 4. They're in central to southern Madagascar, so definitely problematic. To the team, what impacts do we think people in Madagascar should expect, and what preparations can they make to stay safe?
No doubt about it, storm surge is the first problem. Storm surge is definitely the number one concern. Heavy rain. There's also a lot winds. Considering it's a Category 3, definitely hurricane force winds is possible. Most certainly tropical storm force winds expected. And it's, how do you prepare for this thing? Well, you start now if you haven't already got underway. If you are in southern Madagascar, this is the time to prepare because you're running out of time. So if you are in potentially a coastal area, you might want to consider evacuating from that area. If that is the case, if you're further, but then again, you also need to prepare, make sure there's like food, water, all that stuff that you need.
Absolutely, that's certainly the case. When it comes to preparations, MeteoMadagascar making the following recommendations depending on your alert level. Here is the map of the yellow and green alerts. If you're in a yellow alert, there's suggestions. Listen constantly to radio and television news. Abandon waterfront houses. Go to a safe place if a house is not. Stock up on enough for a few days. That's going to be food, that's going to be water. So the way this is going to work, at least in the United States, this is what they recommend over there. That's 1 can of food per person per day for a few days. So how many days you think you're going to need food for? It's 1 can of food per person per day. 1 gallon of water per person per day for as many days as you think as well. That's the preferable stuff. And then you want to place livestock in a safe place. And their final recommendation, to bring canoes back to the mainland and moor them well if you're along the coast. And taking a look at the green alert, these actions to take from there. Raise the cyclone flag if you're responsible for that. That's something that needs to happen. Listen carefully and attentively to weather information on the radio and television. Reinforce doors and windows. Have sufficient stock of candles and electric batteries, and keep medications and papers in a dry place. That is something that both people in green and yellow alerts need to be doing at this time as the storm does continue to move closer. You can also see here the cone of uncertainty from MeteoMadagascar showing an intense tropical cyclone hitting land and then weakening some as it does so. Still a dangerous situation continuing to unfold there. And again, yellow alerts currently in place. We're expecting red alerts to be in place here relatively soon. When it comes to Mauritius's alerts, you can see a strong wind warning is currently in place, as well as a high wave warning. That is for Mauritius at this time. And then we also have, for La Reunion, I know, some warnings in place as well. Let me just see if we can get that there. Strong swell warning for Rodrigues. Yeah, that's the warning that they have at this time. That's what we're looking at. You can see all these different areas here within Cyclone Alerts. Brickvale, Mari, Mahoro, Antanabo, Mentopsi, Malambo, Batovi, and Atismo, Atitanana. I believe I pronounced those. I did the best I could. I apologize. But those are in yellow alerts. You can also see the areas that are currently in green alerts as well. Dangerous situation continuing to unfold here as the storm does move into Madagascar. And, yeah, at this point, we'll just have to see what continues to happen here. But at this time, looking at, again, a dangerous situation for Madagascar. Havoc, I know you're making some observations on the satellite imagery. What are you looking at right now? Do you think that this storm is undergoing a merger eyewall replacement cycle?
No, I don't think it's undergoing a merger so far, given it's starting to emerge on what appears to be the visible water vapor imagery.
All right.
Given microwave has shown a large moat with the inner eye wall nearly isolated. We'll see how this goes over the next couple hours.
That we will. We'll have to see what ends up happening here. We're going to be taking questions, comments, concerns, things like that over the next little while. Please tag us at Force13. We'll be more than glad to answer them. That's at Force13, all in text. It'll light up in a bright orange for us. We'll be more than glad to answer them. All right. Let's see here. A couple of questions. The first one, what are the odds that Imnati becomes a stage 8 on the Cdps scale? The major things that are going to determine that are this eyewall replacement cycle, how much larger it gets, and if it gets much more intense than the much more intense than the current expectation from MeteoFrance. Assuming those things happen, this could get to stage 8. It definitely has the potential to. As I know it is a mid-range stage 7 at this time. It's not going to take too much, especially if the winds are larger than expected, to get it close to stage 8. We'll see if it can go over the line. But dangerous situation is a high-end category 3, currently heading towards Madagascar, expected to be a category 4 at landfall. Let's take a look at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's cone of uncertainty for this storm. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center currently has this storm at 120 miles per hour compared to MeteoFrance's 125. Very close in both cases. A Category 4 peak is expected by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center over the next little bit before it weakens to 125 miles an hour and then slams into land. Likely as a Category 3 storm, according to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. So high in Category 3, low in Category 4, depending on who you go with here. But still, dangerous situation continuing to take place either way as the storm moves towards land. Let's see what we have here. We're seeing, just for clarification, someone saying that, ATCF and Joint Typhoon Warning Center go with the same intensities that they do. Most of the time, sometimes the Joint Typhoon Warning Center doesn't override, but I don't believe they have in this case. Let's talk about the rainfall threat with this storm a little bit. This is according to the European model here, and in the most mountainous regions of Madagascar, we're seeing up to 550 millimeters of rain. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious, 550 millimeters of rain. see what ends up happening there. But those are some catastrophic rain totals there. For those of you in America, that's going to be over 20 inches of rain being a real possibility here. Someone asking, what are the current conditions in Mauritius? Let's take a look. They're on the back end of the storm. They should be getting some clouds and perhaps some rain, but I'm not even expecting that heavier rain. You can see some of those storms convecting over the more mountainous regions, but it looks like some heavier rain and maybe some higher surf on the northern side are the impacts to expect. All right. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to ask us and we'll be more than glad to answer them. Dangerous storm, currently heading towards Madagascar, stage 7 on the Cdps scale, winds of 125 miles per hour, pressure 948 millibars, 948 millibars at this time, as this storm continues to move to the southwest. Looks like the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has a new Dvorak fix. There we go. And Dragon, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was asking. There was a question in the chat there a little earlier. Is there new storms forming besides Imnati in the next 5 days? And what is the temperature of the eye of Imnati? It's a two-parter.
Two-parter question there. In the next 5 days, we don't have any areas of interest as of last night's tropical weather outlook. So nothing there in particular. There doesn't seem to be any other active systems currently in the tropics. We can take a look at some models real quick and see what exactly is going on across the world. The South Indian Ocean and the Southwestern Pacific are going to be the major places. So as we take a look, there's Imnati. And as we head over the next 5 days, you can see there perhaps another system forming in the Southeastern Indian Ocean. And long range, the GFS has that moving in the general direction of Mauritius, La Reunion, Rodrigues. Fairly close. This run having it recurving away from land. But this becomes a rather robust system, so we could see some more robust systems in the southern Indian Ocean later on. And then as we take a look at the Southwest Pacific, the other place of possible cyclone formation, Gulf of Carpentaria looks like it could have something forming here long range, a little bit out farther than 5 days. It's certainly something to look at. Definitely something we're going to be looking at this time. So we'll just have to see what does continue to happen there. That's what we're looking at in terms of the current conditions with storms forming in the next 5 days. Next question. Eye temperature of Imnati at this time. If we take a look at that eye, go to the warmest part, looks to be at about positive 16 degrees. 17 degrees. My goodness. Yeah, 17 degree eye. So, definitely something to note there for sure. That's quite a warm eye. It's an indicator of a robust cyclone.
The exact eye temperature now is 17.6 degrees Celsius.
17.6 degrees. I don't have it that exact on my end, but I'd assume that's correct. I just have it rounded to the nearest one because I'm using Windy at the moment. That would be Walter that's just joined us. Walter, I know that you've been talking about this storm a fair bit behind the scenes. I know that you've been watching the storm closely as well. What are your current thoughts on it, and what have you been seeing as the storm's been moving on towards Madagascar?
You know, if you had some great memory, you know that earlier this month we had Batsarai, which if you take a look at this, if you don't tell me the time or the intensities of the storm, I pretty much thought this is Batsarai, the loop of Batsarai, when you're showing this, because they went on a very similar path. of course, Batterai took a little bit more a souther approach to the, a more closer approach to the Mascarene Islands, but you can see that this storm is still heading towards the Madagascar, the central to the southern regions of Madagascar, which is probably a very devastating blow to the areas again after Batterai hit the area. So this is a very concerning situation that is unfolding right now, and you can see that the storm is still very intense, with 125 mile per hour winds, if I assume correctly.
Yep, 125 miles per hour, 948 millibars at this time.
So it is still pretty strong right now.
Very strong. It looks like it's undergoing an Eyewall replacement cycle as well right now, which is also all
Really?
too familiar.
What is going on between the two?
I know. Between Batserai and Imnati, it's a very similar story thus far. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like a 1-2 punch for Madagascar, and that is not what the
Not a
country
good
really
thing.
needs.
Definitely not. And again, over 500 millimeters of rain a possibility with this storm on top of what we've already had from Anna, Batserai, what was it, Demako? Was its name?
Marco, yeah.
Yeah. And now this. Now Imnati. I almost called it Dovey, and then I was like, no, that's
Movie's South Pack.
Dovey South Pack. Yeah, but my goodness. Sometimes these names get mixed up a little bit. Yeah, the eastern side of Madagascar just getting absolutely slammed with storm after storm after storm, unfortunately. And the humanitarian crisis going on over there just seems to continue to worsen after the impacts of Anna, Batserai, and Dumako. And now Imnati. That's not going to leave them in a good position for cyclones in, what, 2 months?
Yeah, I assume.
Yeah,
Anna struck Madagascar as a remnant. Oh no, not a remnant, not a but a low pressure. I think on early to mid January, and then Batserai. Dumako hit northern Madagascar, similar regions as Anna, around a week ago, and then this thing.
So it's been about a month.
Yeah, a month, and
My
a
goodness.
month with 4 storms.
Yeah, my goodness. Yeah, 4 storms, 1 month. Not a good situation for Madagascar. And again, strong winds, heavy rainfall, high storm surge, all going to be threats with this storm as they were for Batserai. The storm currently, unlike Batserai though, is expected to make landfall as a Category 4, according to MeteoFrance right now, winds of 130 miles per hour. It's also...
They haven't dropped the landfall intensity?
No, they haven't really dropped it. 130 miles per hour, 1 minute. 115 miles per hour, 10 minute.
No, I didn't notice that beforehand. I thought that the intensity maybe dropped a little bit, because when I saw the landfall intensity like around yesterday, I was like, I have no idea why it would be just so high when it makes landfall. But I think the MeteoFrance has a very high confidence in the intensity. But when they don't drop the intensity that in the last 24 hours already.
Yeah, I mean, they've been teetering between high-end Category 3 and low-end Category 4 for landfall for a little while, I feel like. I know the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has. Current landfall intensity from MeteoFrance, 130 miles per hour. Current intensity from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is 125.
Goodness.
So consensus is pretty close. A couple of questions here. Could Imnati be relief to drought in southern Madagascar? I'm not sure if relief would be the right word, but as we track this storm out, you can see on the European model here, the storm expected to take a northern approach. You can actually see the Eyewall replacement cycle on a global model. That's incredible. Don't normally see that. My goodness, that's a ginormous Eyewall. according to the Euro. That's remarkable. But we'll see. We'll see if that ends up materializing. Either way, you can see that landfall to the north. The interesting solution is the GFS, the Global Forecast System. You can see it here rather clearly as the storm moves south. Look at how far south the storm moves here. According to the GFS, it just takes that turn, skids along the coast, makes landfall in way south Madagascar. It's a weakening system.
Well, if that's the case, that will bring huge rainfalls to the southern regions.
That it would,
and especially the southeastern seaboard.
Current expectations from the GFS, nearly 400 millimeters of rain down there, if it does manage. But as of now...
So, regarding your question, yeah, it will relieve the drought situation, but I don't think relief is a great word for describing the scene.
Yeah, you want to... Obviously, the rain would help, but you don't want a rain from a cyclone to be, like, the way you get the relief, if it would be, if I'm going to put that in quotations, to help out, because that could lead to flooding.
That's the concern. You're going to be having a very high amount of rain in a very low amount of time, and regardless of the drought conditions, flooding is still a concern. Even if the areas need the water, you still need to be preparing, as this is going to be dangerous regardless of where you are in Madagascar. Someone else asking, was Anna a tropical storm or a cyclone at peak?
Tropical storm.
Yep, tropical storm peak there.
I remember it's around 50 to 60 miles per hour.
Yeah, it should be. Let me double check.
I don't remember, if you want the truth.
I made the landfall update on Anna, so I remembered, but I think the landfall intensity was 50 miles per hour. And then that was like 6 hours after it got named, so I think the peak is around 50.
Fair enough.
I just noticed something.
What's that?
Yeah.
I noticed something. I'm like, if you were to go back to like the European model versus the GFS, I noticed like it's actually the European model's taking that northern trend. It's very close to the cap. Could that hit the capital?
Theory of that.
Antananarivo? Antananarivo,
I think.
Antananarivo, yeah. Antananarivo.
Didn't Batsirai hit there like 3 weeks ago?
Batsirai went south of there, but it did drop a lot of rain. Either way, it looks like a southward track south of Antananarivo is the current expectation, even from the Euro. So,
okay.
Definitely some heavy rains possible, but no direct hit from the winds or anything like that. My goodness, very heavy rainfall currently expected as the storm moves over more mountainous regions, and you can see that here. Rain rates of over 70 millimeters in 3 hours. That's over 20 millimeters an hour, which, at least to me, that's kind of crazy. And the GFS's rain rates, when this storm moves over land, are about 25 to 30 millimeters an hour. It's just like, goodness gracious. Yeah, there you go, 25, 30, 35, nearly, 35 millimeters an hour. My goodness.
Question from Carlos in chat. Cyclone Emnati will affect south of Mozambique. I don't think it will affect Mozambique, as most models have it going south of Madagascar after making a close brush or landfall.
Similar to what did to Batsirai, is that it will go south rather clearly, and then it will miss the entire African continent after it hit Madagascar.
Yeah, one of those questions was regarding whether it would hit mainland Africa. It probably won't because of that southwest trend.
Yeah, the storm is not currently anticipated to be impacting the mainlands of Africa really at all. That's going to be South Africa, Mozambique, those areas, Zimbabwe. You're not really going to have to worry about this storm. It's not really going to be a problem for you. So there's Mozambique, there's South Africa. It's not expected to impact you. And Zimbabwe certainly not going to get any impacts. The worst of the impacts could be maybe an outer band or two of rain if it goes on the very western side of the possible track solutions.
Another thing I want to point out, the moat on Imnati just keeps getting more and more defined as each frame passes. The moat could finish wrapping around the entire inner eyewall by the time we end this coverage.
Yeah, that moat is rapidly growing. And if it's any indication, we could have a massive eye coming out of this.
Yeah. Microwave always shows a massive moat on the latest frames when I saw them.
My goodness. Could you send that into live output so we can put that up on the screen?
Yeah, let me find them.
Ah, I found the image.
You found an
It was
image?
pretty high. It was pretty big. Wow. Let me copy the image out. Hold on.
Here we go. Because if this is a massive eyewall replacement cycle that's taking place and this eye is going to be huge, that's bad news for Madagascar. And the European model, I don't think I've ever seen from a global model this well defined of an eyewall replacement cycle. It shows huge outer bands. The European model shows a well defined outer eyewall that's ginormous. Like, we're talking the radius of the eyewall is 80 miles. The diameter of the eye is over 190 miles. That's incredible.
Yeah, now, another thing I want to point out. How can Cat 4 chances be 60% but Cat 5 chances be 4%?
If it didn't become a Cat 5, then the chances of it making landfall should be low. We're not anticipating it to be a Cat 5, like fairly possibly, unless this storm rapidly intensifies. But the forecaster disagree with this hypothesis, so we're putting the chances that low. I may answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just about MeteoFrance's forecast philosophy. They expect a minimal Category 4 landfall. Currently, I think there's some reason to believe it could be a bit weaker than that, especially with the sidewall replacement cycle, so we have 60% chance of that. But there's really no evidence to indicate that this will end up being a Category 5 right now when it does hit land. The conditions are technically there, but there's no model output, there's no ensemble output, there's no forecast from officials. There's no evidence to say that this will do it. The reason why it's at 4% is because we know it's not impossible, but the chance is relatively low. Look at this microwave frame. This is absolutely incredible. Look at how large that eye is, that outer eye wall.
With the inner eyewall completely isolated. That kind of reminds me of how Winnie in 97 ended up looking invisible.
Ah.
But Winnie obviously was way larger.
Yes, of course. But yeah, that eyewall replacement cycle is currently ongoing, that's for sure. There's no two ways about it at this point. That inner eyewall is on borrowed time.
Our eyewall has at least 1 to maybe 5 hours before it's completely surrounded by the moat on visible imagery. And then after that, it's just a matter of how fast the storm goes for it to collapse.
Yep. If anyone else has any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to ask them and we'll be more than glad to answer them. We have someone asking, Someone was just asking, is an Eyewall replacement cycle incoming? We can definitely say yes. I think we just addressed that. Someone asking, could this be a historic storm for Madagascar? Yes, and not in a good way. This is going to be round 4 for them of pretty bad impacts. So I think that if the storm in its own right isn't historic, the cumulative impacts of this storm, Damako, Anna, and Batsirai combined will definitely be something that goes down in history.
Someone chat's asking, the website they're using has Imnati at 139.41. I'm assuming that's a J2WC for that estimate. I mean, they're the only ones having this as a Category 4.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah, JTWC does have Category 4, 130 miles per hour and 141 millibars. Let's check something else here real quick. Looking at things. Yeah, MeteoFrance still 125 miles per hour and 148 millibars. But yeah, no, JTWC has this as a Category 4. Either way, high-end Category 3, low-end Category 4, it doesn't matter. It's very close in intensity. It's a 5-mile-an-hour difference, and the impacts are ultimately going to be the same in that 5-mile-an-hour difference. It's just a Saffir-Simpson category change. That's the big difference.
Someone in chat asking, where's Nathan? Nathan's currently busy in the UK doing something else related to a squall line that's passing through there.
Yeah, I think Nathan lives in the Manchester area in the UK. I think what happens there is that I think he's doing I think around a drive around, just checking out like how the flooding threat in like southern Manchester. I think that's on the Force 13 UK channel.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, definitely. You can go over there if you're interested in that coverage. If you're from the United Kingdom, there's coverage going on over there for that. We're talking about Imnati here. Coming back to that, you can see those bursts of convection over Mauritius and La Reunion, dropping lots of rain. Continued impacts expected for both of those areas here for the next little while. La Reunion has a bit longer than Mauritius. Let's go over those cyclone alerts again, as it's been a little bit since we did it last time. Orange alert currently in place for La Reunion. Yellow alerts currently in place for coastal Madagascar, and green alerts surrounding that. And finally, we have strong wind warnings in place and high wave warnings for Mauritius. And we also have for La Reunion, let me just see. Yeah, it's a strong swell warning for Rodrigues, not La Reunion, Rodrigues. Strong swell warning for Rodrigues, strong wind and high wave warnings for Mauritius at this time, both driven by Cyclone Emnati's passage. Those are the current alerts currently in place as the storm does move towards Madagascar at this time. Again, devastating landfall currently expected by the storm. Category 4 expected by MeteoFrance. Category 3 expected by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Either way, a major cyclone landfall is expected. We have this as a stage 7 on the cyclone destruction potential scale when it does so. That means catastrophic damage is possible for this storm. Very dangerous situation continuing to unfold there. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to ask us, and we'll be more than glad to answer them as the stream does continue. We currently have 20 more minutes before we'll be going off the air, so now is the time to be asking your questions.
Joshua, somebody is mentioning 4 major hurricanes taking place in 1 year. I feel that this has happened before to another place.
Yeah, they
First of all, we didn't have 4 major cyclones hit in the same place. We just had 2 tropical storms and then 2 major hurricanes. So your claim is wrong.
A double question. What is the size of Imnati's eye, and what are the cold temps of Imnati?
Let's get those. the size of Emnati's eye at this time, the inner eye. Let's see.
Cold temps.
About 17 miles in diameter. And then, Walter, I'm going to let you get those temperatures there. So I think you're going to be getting those here pretty
Cloud
quick.
top, the cloud
Shortly.
top's temperature. The latest frame shows a negative 80.7 degree cloud top.
All right. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. I do want to apologize for the coughing a little bit. I got a little bit of a cold here that's been going around, so I apologize for the coughing and
Hey,
things
Thomas.
like that. But
Be
with,
safe.
with that being said, someone asking, is it possible for this to be a Cat 5?
Chances are
Likely.
slim. Chances are extremely slim for that, but if it did, that would not end up well for Madagascar.
Certainly not. That'd be really bad.
Fair question. How long until landfall? Around 1 to 2 days, if I'm correct.
We've got, let's see. We got about 2 days till landfall if the current forecast holds. So that's what we're looking at right
48
now.
hours.
Yep. Looks to be about what we're getting.
And we have new microwave.
We have new microwave.
Being output. And our Eyewall opened up to the, I think it's the eastern side, which visible in IR imagery has been hinting at as it's eroding away.
Yeah, you can see that rather clearly there. The outer eye wall doesn't look completely closed off to me. It looks like that has an eastern side issue, and it also has on the northern side a little bit of a gap. So perhaps the outer eye wall is beginning to choke off the inner eye wall before it's ready to take over. That could be good news. Maybe that could cause some significant structural problems for the storm as it tries to establish itself. I mean, when a storm tries to become this large, I mean, you're going to get structural problems when it tries to really get going, I feel like.
And they do tend to intensify a lot slower, since they're not as compact anymore and have larger cores.
So that's good news. At the least, the maximum winds might not be quite as high, but the storm surge, I think it'd have to be a lot bigger, wouldn't it?
And in a lot bigger radius.
Yeah, so the impact, the area of impact is going to be much larger than it was initially anticipated to be. I can't imagine this isn't going to drive up the CDPS to a very large degree. Unfortunately, when that does end up coming out.
Unless it has a major intensity change, I don't think it'll get up to stage 8 after the current CDPS from earlier today.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It's currently a stage 7, but
Stage
we'll
7
have to
with
see.
Stage 7 with the size being a major issue, 25% on the rain and the wind.
Well, the size is going to go up quite a bit here, I think.
Yeah,
So we'll just have to see. We're also now joined by Coley. I know you've been watching this storm closely over the last little while. What are your current thoughts on this storm as it barrels towards Madagascar?
I mean, it's going through an Eyewall replacement cycle, which definitely I don't think that's a good thing at all. Even if it just weakens a little bit, or even like 20 miles per hour, or goes down a category or something like that. If it weakens, it doesn't matter because the rains are only going to be worse. Flooding is a very big issue, and the fact that they just got hit by 3 tropical cyclones does not help for these areas. So this is a very concerning situation, and I hope for the best for the people living in Madagascar.
Absolutely.
Question in chat: do we know the landfall totals for storm surge in Madagascar?
For surge, let me check and see what I can find on surge. MeteoFrance normally releases stuff regarding that.
Remember that's a weather bulletin thing. But I'll have to find the text file first.
Yeah, we'll get that information for you for sure. If it's anything like Bad Cirri, the expectation's probably about 1 meter. Inland.
Another question I noticed. Are there any signs of weakening from Imnati or strengthening? None for strengthening, given it's now entering its hour replacement cycle. Weakening, it's gonna likely start weakening as the moat takes hold.
The pressure's probably going to remain about the same, but the actual wind speed's going to die down a bit. Still going to be a Category 2 or 3 storm when it comes out of it. And if it comes out of it quickly, it could re-strengthen. And that would be bad news for sure.
Yeah. And the wind speeds, the maximum wind speeds area would expand too, which is not a good thing. Even if those winds are a little bit weaker than they are, say now with the smaller Eyewall, the impacts will only be worse because of, more widespread.
One thing.
What's that?
I posted in there the multi-Madagascar comparison. I think that's kind of important to note.
Yeah, there we go. We can pull that up. This right here, this is a consensus of weather models. And this gives you an idea of what the current computer models are thinking for this storm at this time. So you can see wind shear's expected to be relatively low over the next day or so. That's definitely the current expectation. But we also have sea surface temperatures that are going to be dropping off. Looks like moisture's going to go up a bit. And you can see the models are south of MeteoFrance's track. And I personally believe the storm is going to go south of MeteoFrance's track. You can see the storm's been heading in virtually a straight line for the last little while on the best track for MeteoFrance. And then they suddenly just have this this northerly jog to the motion that's just not happening. I mean, if you just extrapolate its current motion in a straight line, you get the southern end of the track guidance of the track forecast. So I personally think this is probably going to end up going south of where it's expected to go if current trends continue. Do we have any reason to disagree with that?
No.
I don't think we do. We'll see. Either way, if you're within MeteoFrance's cone of uncertainty, regardless of if you're on the northern side or the southern side, preparations need to remain the same. As this dangerous storm continues its approach towards Madagascar. Someone asking, any chance that the Eyewall replacement cycle will fail?
I think it's just gonna depend on how the storm just ends up the next several hours.
Yeah, and I don't understand what it means by fail. I'm a little bit confused by that.
Go on.
Even if it does, no matter what happens, really, unless it misses land, which won't happen, rainfall and rainfall and flooding will be a big threat, and it'll be pretty widespread because we have the outer Eyewall already taking place. Meaning the rainfall is going to be widespread no matter what happens, even if the wind speeds aren't as strong as, even if they're not very strong. So I don't think it's going to fail in that sense at all.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I think that what they mean by that is that the Eyewall replacement cycle attempts to happen and the outer Eyewall collapses and the inner Eyewall is in such a state of disrepair that it can't really do much. In that case, you get a huge structure problem for the storm in the event that the inner Eyewall overpowers the outer Eyewall. then this could get really intense really fast, but the impacts will be smaller. But at this point, I don't really see it failing, as the outer eye wall is basically already at a point where it's choking off the inner eye wall. So I'm fairly certain at this point that that Eyewall replacement cycle isn't going to be failing. I don't know about the rest of our team. What do you guys think?
Also, I think the Eyewall replacement cycle is going to finish.
It is gonna succeed. If you take a look to the satellite, there is if you Thomas, if you can show the image I just posted on live output.
Yeah, absolutely. That's up on the screen now.
So you know, the southern side of the CDO. There's already a little break in the south of the eye, and some of the bandings of the CDO is already of the inner eye wall is just breaking up already, and the outer eye wall very clearly shown in this the 4X imagery. Therefore, I think this eye wall replacement cycle is gonna succeed no matter what.
I'd be inclined to agree with that. It's well on its way. It's already well underway.
The only chat saying, I see thunderstorms to the west Madagascar. I think those are actually just regular blow-ups along the coastline.
Yeah, those thunderstorms there in western Madagascar, in a warm and humid environment like that with the more mountainous regions, that convection does tend to happen. As these cyclones approach as well, and their area of influence is large like this one, those outer bands, that outflow, can influence that kind of convecting as well. And it doesn't take much with how warm and moist it is. It doesn't take much lift at all to get thunderstorms going. So yeah, those thunderstorms mostly unrelated to the storm, but as the storm moves inland, it'll definitely help fire off more storms throughout the entirety of the country. If you have any final questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, we're in the final 8 minutes or so, 7 minutes of the stream. Please ask and we'll be more than glad to answer them.
I was just seeing someone saying, how is it not a Category 4 already, being around 125 miles per hour? The reason why it's not a Cat 4 yet, it's going through Eyewall replacement cycle.
Yeah, that Eyewall replacement cycle has halted strengthening somewhat. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center does believe it's a Category 4, though. They do believe that that's what it ended up peaking as. It's either high-end Category 3, low-end Category 4. Force 13 no longer does operational estimates, but in post-analysis, we'll be letting you know if we thought that this storm was a Category 3 or 4 at this point, as our reanalysis team will get a hold of this after the storm does die off. But operationally, we're going with MeteoFrance's estimate of 125 miles per hour and a pressure of 948 millibars. Someone asking, how big is Cyclone Emnati right now?
Big.
Guess it depends on your measure.
It's pretty big. I don't know how big though.
Exact number.
From north to south, when taking like where I believe the outflow kind of stops from start to stop and outflow, you've got over 1,000 miles of influence. East to west, it's not so large. It's more in the ballpark of 700 miles. And then when it comes to like the CDO itself, when we head towards that kind of thing, we're looking at about 200 miles wide. So really depends on where you're measuring it from, but the storm is definitely large, and it's only going to get larger with time.
One thing, noticed, if you notice there's storms in the northwest, in northwest Madagascar. Those are not part of Imnati, right?
That's correct. No, those are not part of Imnati. Those are their own thing. Another question. What are the chances of a Category 5 in a few hours? I can tell you it's 0.
Absolutely.
As long as the Eyewall replacement cycle continues, this storm will not be strengthening even a hair in terms of wind speed. So in the next few hours, virtually 0. And we don't even have it at 5% before landfall, so very unlikely. All right. Let's see. Any last-minute comments, questions, concerns? Now the time to ask them. We're going to go down the line now and get our team's final thoughts for this storm before we do head off the air. Dragon Rider, we're going to start with you. What are your final thoughts? If there's one thing the viewers need to know, what do you think it is?
Preparation is everything. The next day or two is critical. Listening to the radio and the TV outlets is a starting point to get the latest information. This stream helped a lot too. But when it comes to preparation, obviously, if you're in the east coast of Madagascar, moving inland is probably your best bet. You gotta move inland, and if you think things are going to be bad, now is the time to pull that off. If you're in coastal areas of Madagascar, especially in the yellow warnings right now, make sure you gather enough food, make sure you gather water, make sure you gather supplies, make sure you are ready. Make sure that you are prepared for this storm, because we already saw Batsarai already hit 3 weeks earlier. Now that second punch and that 1-2 punch is coming, and you want to be ready for it.
Absolutely. Havoc, final thoughts?
I'd say just watch this Eyewall replacement cycle closely and make preparations based on MeteoFrance's warnings and MeteoMadagascar's, because this will not be pretty in the next 1 to 2 days.
All right, Coley, final thoughts?
Yeah. I think the primary threat with this is definitely the rainfall. You're gonna hear, things like the Eyewall replacement cycle is weakening it, or it's not as strong as it used to be. It's not going to strengthen anymore. I don't think that's the main concern. The main concern is that if an Eyewall replacement cycle occurs or is trying to occur, the rains are just going to be worse, and you have to be prepared, because even if you live inland, the flooding could be bad, mudslides could be bad, because this is going to be a pretty decently big storm with lots of rain. And then the primary threat is just the wind and the storm surge, which is nothing to mess around with. You have to be prepared for that too.
All right, John, what do you think? What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are just, like everybody else said, just be prepared for this. It looks like it's going to be a big rainfall event with a lot of wind, so just be prepared, listen to your local authorities, and that's about it.
And finally, Walter, what are your final thoughts?
When the next MeteoFrance bulletin came, the intensity might drop a little bit because of the Eyewall replacement cycle affecting its intensification. But as per every single storm in every single part of the world, every single storm that went through our replacement cycles succeed in our replacement cycles and then clear out its eye again, and the intensification rate will soon starting to ramp up a little bit, or maybe ramp up faster than we expected. So, after this our replacement cycle finished, that is really the time that you should be fully prepared if you're around the the affecting areas of this storm, you should be fully prepared and brace for the storm, because this is something that you would not be enjoyed, especially when you've already been hit by something called Batsarai earlier this month.
That's absolutely the case. With that being said, we'd like to thank all of you for watching this stream. That's the final thoughts from our team. Make sure that you're prepared for this storm. Make sure you're staying up to date with alerts from your local authorities and officials. MeteoFrance, MeteoMadagascar, the Mauritius Meteorological Center, all those areas. Make sure that you are keeping up to date with the latest information for your area. Emnati, an extremely dangerous situation capable of catastrophic damage, and a stage 7 on the Cdps scale. Thank you all so much for watching. We hope to see you here later today. We're going to have a video update coming out later today as well. So you can expect that tomorrow morning around 6 a.m. And then you can also expect some other stuff coming out throughout the day on our social media platforms on both Facebook and Twitter. Thanks again for watching. We're going to continue to ramp up coverage as this storm does continue to move towards Madagascar, as again, another devastating threat is a possibility. We'll see you next time here on Force 13. We hope to see you here at around 6 a.m. for our next video update. Thanks again. Stay safe out there. Be prepared. Have a nice rest of your day.